With the 2024 offseason just around the corner and Sam Howell struggling over these last couple of games, could the Washington Commanders, with a new head coach, potentially go out and replace Sam Howell to get their new quarterback of the future during the 2024 offseason? They're going to have a high draft pick. They're going to have a lot of cap space here during the 2024 offseason. I think it's certainly possible, but I do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer before we get into all the details on today's show. Personally, I like Howell. I think he has some really nice qualities in his game that show that he could be a potential franchise quarterback for this team. And Lord knows, quarterback is not the biggest issue with this Commanders roster, so it's definitely possible that they stick with Howell, even with a new head coach coming in. But I do think it's important to discuss the possibilities and some potential upgrades here for the Commanders at the quarterback position as we approach the 2024 offseason, because presumably a new head coach is going to be coming in. I think it's going to be an offensive mind, and that coach owes Sam Howell nothing. So they might want to go get their guy. So I definitely think that this is a discussion that's worthy of having right now. But definitely I like Sam Howell. I like the fact that he can throw the football. With the defense knowing that he has to throw it, he might be a little bit too aggressive. He might be holding on to the ball a little bit too long at this point, which is why we're having this discussion right now. But I just want to give that little disclaimer here because I do like Howell, and I'd be fine with him being the starting quarterback in 2024. But there are some interesting possibilities here for the Washington Commanders that we're going to discuss on today's show. So before we get into our first scenario here in just a second, go ahead and click that subscribe button for me right now for in-depth Commanders off-season coverage coming up here during 2024. Every time they make a big move, if they fire Ron Rivera, we're going to have a video for you. If they hire a new head coach, we're going to have a video for you guys. Every time they make a signing during a very crucial free agency period, every time they make a draft pick during a very crucial NFL draft coming up for this team, we're going to have you covered with in-depth coverage for free right here on YouTube. So do me a favor, click that subscribe button and join the Commanders Report family right now. All right, so now let's start with free agency because I really think that there's only one quarterback that's going to be slated to be a free agent this year that I think would actually potentially be an upgrade over Sam Howell. And this one is actually a little bit shaky, and that's former Washington Redskins quarterback Kirk Cousins. Now, of course, the Minnesota Vikings, it's been rumored that Kirk and the Vikings want to get another one-year deal done there in Minnesota, so this one might not even be possible by the time he hits the open market. But listen, Washington legend, you like that, right? All this different stuff, man. This guy was a starter here in Washington for 3 years, and the career stats speak for themselves because Kirk Cousins has been a really, really good starting quarterback in this league for a long time. Now, you can say what you want about him when it comes to the primetime games and the playoff games and the records in those types of situations, but the stats speak for themselves, guys. This guy is consistently over 65% completion percentage, over 4,000 yards, and getting close to 33 touchdowns, and he keeps the interceptions relatively low. And he also, this year, he did deal with an Achilles injury. He's going to be a bit older. But overall, man, I think that the profile fits for the Washington Commanders here, especially if they bring in a West Coast system offensive-minded head coach that's coming from the Shanahan or McVay tree. Kirk Cousins has played in this type of offense ever since he entered the league with even Jay Gruden going back to his days here in Washington. He was a 3-year starter here. He likes the area. And then also, the thing they do need to keep in mind is that he's going to be 36 years old next year, coming off an Achilles tear. So that's definitely going to be something that's going to be a bit risky. And then also, Kirk Cousins is going to be pretty expensive as well because he is an established starting quarterback in this league. So you're definitely taking on some risks here if you're going and getting Kirk Cousins. And because of all those risks involved, the 36-year-old coming off the Achilles tear, is he really going to be the same quarterback when he comes back? I think that Kirk will probably be pretty good when he comes back next season, whoever he's playing for. But honestly, I would rather stick with Sam Howell on his contract than pay Kirk Cousins a crap ton of money in free agency next year to be the next quarterback of the Washington Commanders. I think that this would be a Band-Aid. I don't think it's a long-term answer. So I think that I would pass on Kirk Cousins, even though he's a Washington legend, and I would stick with Sam Howell if it's a choice between Cousins or Sam. Now, let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Should the Washington Commanders bring back Kirk Cousins here to the nation's capital? Give me a yes or give me a no. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. So YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. When that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me a yes or a no down there in the comments section. All right, now we shift from free agency to trade targets, and I think there's some interesting options here for the Washington Commanders to consider, starting with Los Angeles Rams quarterback Matthew Stafford, a Super Bowl champion, somebody that has insane arm talent, really, really good quarterback, still a top 10 guy in this league, in my opinion, has really carried that Los Angeles Rams offense here in 2023. Now, he's had some elbow issues. He is getting older, but also I just don't think the Rams are going to be dealing, and I still think the Rams are trying to win with Sean McVay as their head coach. I don't think they're ready to blow stuff up, and especially because they still have Aaron Donald under contract. Puka Nacua and Kyron Williams, they're playing great. Cooper Kupp is still here in L.A. I really do think the Rams are going to be keeping a hold on Matthew Stafford. Really don't think he's going to be much of an option, even if the Commanders want to pursue him. Number 2 on the list of potential trade targets here is Justin Fields, and like Kirk Cousins, this one comes with a lot of risk, in my opinion. He's somebody that has not been a really good pocket passer to this point in his NFL career. Really, really good in terms of the rushing aspect from the position. He's an elite quarterback rushing guy, but he's just not the type of guy that's going to be able to, go in shotgun here. The defense knows you're throwing the football and rip a full field progression read. That's not Justin Fields' game. We complain about Sam Howell holding on to the football for too long. Justin Fields holds on to the ball for even longer. So I really don't see this as a fit unless you pair him with the right head coach. And even then, there's a ton of risk here for what you would have to give up for him. So I would also pass on Justin Fields. Now, coming up here, I'm gonna let you guys know what I think is potentially the best quarterback trade target for the Washington Commanders here in the 2024 offseason. But before I get into that name, go ahead and check out our friends at Prize Picks, today's sponsor. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100 today. If you're looking to spice up your game days this NFL season, you can get started with Prize Picks, which is a skill-based, real money daily fantasy sports game. And if you're wondering how daily fantasy sports works, here's how. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they'll go for more or less than their Prize Picks projection. You can even win up to 25 times your money on any entry. So let's take a look at my entry for this Thursday night football matchup this week here in Week 14 between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the New England Patriots. I got the more on Mitchell Trubisky, the more on Jalen Warren, a running back there in Pittsburgh that has really impressed me. And also George Pickens, 38.5. I think he gets more than that because when Trubisky was the starter for Pittsburgh last year, George Pickens was his favorite receiver, and I think he's going to get a lot of targets in this one. You can get your picks in before Thursday night football or even on Sunday here. Go ahead and check it out now at prizepicks.com/CLNS and use our code CLNS for a deposit match up to $100 today. With Prize Picks, it takes less than 60 seconds to make your picks. So what are you waiting for? Get it going right now before Thursday night and before Sunday kickoff. PrizePicks.com/CLNS is the link, and use our code CLNS for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's CLNS, code CLNS at PrizePicks.com/CLNS for a deposit match up to $100 today. Now, I think actually the most likely QB trade target for the Washington Commanders this offseason is going to be Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that, and I'll get to that in a second. But first, let's take a look at how Kyler has done here since coming back from that ACL tear suffered last season. He's played in 4 games. Completion percentage is a little bit lower than his career average here at 60.8, but he does have 6 total touchdowns, just 2 interceptions. He played the Pittsburgh Steelers last week, and he was really dialing it up, even over the middle of the field, which is something we haven't seen in Kyler's game throughout his career. So it seems like Kyler is definitely somebody that can be a true franchise quarterback option for an NFL team. And the numbers bear that out, guys. He's been getting pretty darn close to 4,000 passing yards here for the last couple of seasons. He gets to about 25 touchdowns to about 10 to 12 interceptions when he's given a full season. And Kyler Murray is definitely the type of guy that provides the rushing element as well. He's an elite scrambler. He's got great agility to get in and out of the pocket. He's got great pocket feel. Now, he definitely has downsides to his game, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But let's talk about whether or not the Commanders could actually make this work, because if Arizona is drafting a new quarterback, say they get the number 2 overall draft pick in this year's NFL draft, and let's say Chicago gets number 1 and they're taking Caleb Williams, and they want to take Drake Maye, and they want to trade down, right? And they need to get rid of Kyler Murray. Then I think that the options for them are going to be limited, because there's just not many teams that can afford Kyler Murray's contract if he is traded. Right now, going into the 2024 offseason, the Commanders will have over $88 million to spend. I mean, that is absolutely an astronomical number. That's going to be tops in the National Football League here, at least most likely. And Kyler Murray, there's no doubt about it, man. He is expensive, okay? You look at his contract, he still has 4 years left. So if you trade for him, you're trading for him for the long haul. He is going to be your guy for the foreseeable future here, but that cap hit is absolutely massive at $46.05 million. There's just not that many teams, guys, that are going to be willing to take on that level of cap hit. But Washington is one of those teams right now that has the cap space to potentially make it work. Now, if you spend $46 million of that 88 in available cap space, that limits what you can do for the rest of the team, but it would secure you a bona fide franchise quarterback here in Washington immediately for the new head coach that comes here to the nation's capital. Now, but there are some concerns with Kyler Murray's game that we have to address. First of all, the size. He's only 5'10", 207 pounds. He's already had a major ACL injury, so that's definitely something that's going to be a concern, because yes, especially height matters when you are an NFL quarterback, and we'll talk about that in just a second as well. But also, something that really bothers me about Kyler is his attitude, all right? He doesn't strike many people as a true leader. He's somebody that has kind of, had some poor moments with the media. Some former teammates have called him out about his work ethic, about his attitude, about the way he treats other people. And is that really something that you want to bring in here to Washington and have to pay a $46 million cap hit plus draft capital to bring in? I'm not too sure. And then also, we talked about how the size will affect his play. Throwing over the middle is an issue in Kyler's game. He's got one of the best deep balls in the National Football League. When he chucks it down the field, it reminds me of Russell Wilson in his heyday, man. It just puts it right on a dot, perfect trajectory. It's one of the best deep balls in football, but he has a really tough time seeing over the middle of the field within the pocket. And that's something that really limits what he's going to be able to do throughout his NFL career. So that's a limitation that you're going to have to keep in mind. So let's talk about a potential trade scenario here for the Washington Commanders, where I think that it's going to cost probably a conditional first-round pick. So what that means is if Kyler meets certain thresholds, whether it's wins, whether it's reps, whether it's games played, whatever the case may be, it becomes a first-round pick. But if he doesn't meet those criteria, it becomes a second-round pick. And then to boot, you have to give them an additional third-round pick in 2024. So the only draft pick you give up this year is that third rounder in 2024, but then you do lose one of those draft picks in 2025, depending on how much Kyler Murray plays and how well he plays. So let me know what you guys think about this trade idea down there in the comment section. Would you accept this trade if you are hired to be the next head coach or GM of the Washington Commanders? Type A if you're going to accept it, or type D if you're going to decline it. All right, now let's move on to the rookies here, the potential rookie targets for the Washington Commanders to replace Sam Howell with here in the 2024 NFL Draft. And really, right now, I see 3 options that the Commanders could take. Number 1 option is that you could trade up for Caleb Williams. And, this might be like, you might be saying to yourself, Jack, what the heck, man? There's no way the Pittsburgh or the Washington Commanders are going to end up getting Caleb Williams. But I'm telling you right now, if the Chicago Bears want to hang on to Justin Fields, and all right, and if they had the opportunity to draft Caleb Williams, I know if I was the Bears, I'd be taking Williams, all right? But there's definitely a possibility, especially if Fields plays well the rest of this season, that they hang on to Justin and they trade back to get additional draft capital for the future. And I don't think they're going to want to move back too much, because I think they're going to have a top draft prospect like a Maserati Marvin Harrison, or maybe an offensive tackle, something along those lines that they're going to be targeting early in the draft. So the Commanders could be in a prime position to trade up for Caleb Williams. And I think this is probably the cost that it's going to take. I think it's going to take your first rounder, not only this year, but next year. You're going to have to give up a second rounder this year as well. And then you're going to have to give up a third rounder in 2025. But listen, man, Caleb Williams, when you look at the stats, this guy is one of the most decorated college football quarterbacks of all time. And in my opinion, the film is even better than the stats. This year, he had the highest completion percentage of his college career. He did play in 2 less games to boot. He's not going to be playing in his bowl game, just so you guys know that. So he's not going to have the same amount of touchdowns, especially during that Heisman campaign in 2022. But, man, Caleb Williams can do things on the football field that maybe 5, 6, 7 quarterbacks on the planet today can do. And when you watch him on film, he is actually really polished as well. Really good footwork. Really does a great job at keeping a really good base. It makes really good decisions as well, usually. He's also really good at getting through his progression reads. He can get through a full field progression read, which is something that's pretty rare in top flight college quarterbacks, especially with his physical talent. This guy can run the football. He can scramble. He's a great playmaker. He's got great downfield vision. He's got great accuracy down the field. And of course, the arm strength and arm talent is there where he can throw it 70 yards on a dot from any angle. You name something that you want a quarterback to do on the field, that's Caleb Williams, and that's what he can do. He's probably the best on-field quarterback prospect I have ever evaluated for the NFL draft. He is a Mahomes-type talent, at least in my opinion. If the Commanders can somehow trade up to that number 1 overall pick, I think it would be well worth the compensation. But I understand why some people like Drake Maye a little bit better, and that's option 2 for the Commanders here. You could trade up for the North Carolina product here because he's got the same kind of physical tools and, kind of the same ability as Williams. Not quite on the same level. He's still a really good quarterback prospect. He's not quite at Caleb Williams' level, in my opinion, but he's got the personality that you look for. Caleb Williams is more aloof. He's more he's more of a douchebag, if we want to be completely honest. Drake Maye is more of a leader. He's more of a stand-up citizen, if you want to put it that way. But, you look at the stat comparison here. Drake Maye is completing a lower completion percentage there, about the same amount of yards. Caleb Williams does have more touchdowns, but the rush yards is actually something that's a little bit surprising there. Drake Maye is sneaky good. Is a sneaky good athlete here where he's going to be able to be mobile at his size with his arm strength. Don't get it twisted, man. Drake Maye is absolutely a bona fide top 3 draft product in this draft. I don't think he's quite on the same level as the Caleb Williams on the field, but I think he's got the personality that you look for if you're looking for a leader type in your locker room. And, the debate's really going to be who goes number 1 overall. Now, of course, if Caleb goes number 1, the Commanders could trade up with like the Patriots or even the Cardinals to try and get Drake Maye, number 2 or number 3. But I think that you could potentially have to do the same trade package here with the Chicago Bears to trade up to number 1 just to make sure that you get your guy. If Drake Maye is your guy, I think you got to get him as early as you possibly can. So unless you know Chicago is going to be taking Caleb, I think you got to take your shot and try to get your guy as early in this draft as you possibly can. But the big question is it Caleb or is it Drake Maye if you're trading up? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Who would you rather have as the next quarterback of the Washington Commanders? Type CW for Caleb Williams or DM for Drake Maye. So the third option for the Commanders is you don't trade up. You stay put at wherever you're drafting, whether that's 3, whether that's 4, whether that's 5, and draft a quarterback there. Now, if you do this, you're probably not going to get Caleb Williams or Drake Maye, all right? Those guys are probably going to go number 1 and number 2 or 1 and number 3 at the very least. So right now the Commanders sit at the number 4 overall selection in the 2024 NFL Draft. And right now, the Cardinals with Kyler Murray, they're winning football games. So it seems to me like Washington, which is completely down in the dumps, could seriously move down in this draft order here and at least get to the number 3 spot. And let's say that Caleb Williams goes 1, Drake Maye goes 2. I think it's going to be very interesting to see whether Michael Penix Jr. or Jaden Daniels out of LSU, how far these guys rise up the ranks here, because we know Williams and Maye will probably be the first 2 guys off the board. But the question is, who's going to be number 3, and how high are those guys? Is that third quarterback going to be drafted? Michael Penix Jr., maybe more of a pro-style quarterback here. Big arm, can throw it 70 yards down the field. Cannon of an arm there in Washington. And then Jaden Daniels as kind of the complete physical skill set tool belt that you look for here. He's got great legs. He can run the football. He's got a good arm as well. maybe less so in the mental processing department at this point in his career than Michael Penix, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see how high these two quarterback prospects rise in this process. And if the Commanders really want to get a new quarterback and move off of Sam Howell, I think that one of these guys is going to rise during this process to the point where they could be an option. Now, let me know, who is your guy down in the comment section? Who do you want the Commanders to have as their starting quarterback at the start of the 2024 season? If it's Sam Howell, it's perfectly fine, man. I like Sam. I think that he could be a good potential franchise quarterback here in Washington for the long run. But if you want to make a trade, if you want to sign somebody, if you want to draft somebody, let me know down there in the comment section who you want to see as the leader of the Burgundy and Gold here in 2024. Well, that's going to be it for me today, guys. I know it was a bit of a long one today, but we got through it. Thank you so much to all the real ones that made it with me here to the end of today's show. If you want more in-depth Commanders coverage throughout the 2024 offseason here, like I said, when they get a new head coach, when they make signings, when they get draft picks, if you want in-depth analysis on all the top draft targets for the Commanders, this is going to be the place for you. The best part, it's 100% free, so make sure you click that subscribe button right now.